This next couple of experiments, a little involved to explain. If you'll indulge me, I just want to read a little bit in addition to showing you the stimulus, and that's lazy, and I hate that, but just indulge me just this once. When we're speaking of empirical investigations of imagery, they're clever, and they show how that processes can interfere with each other. Lee Brooks, and again, you can see how old some of these studies are. This one goes to 68. What is that, 56 years ago? Lee Brooks, widely regarded as yielding some of the best evidence that images are distinct from verbal things, or at least invoke different processes. In one condition, participants were asked to imagine a letter such as this big capital F, and then to move clockwise mentally from a particular corner marked on the figure, so you can see bottom left, and indicate for each corner whether it was at the extreme top or extreme bottom of the letter, and the correct responses are top yes, then yes, and then no, 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 and then finally wrapping around to yes again, etc. Participants indicated their responses in different ways. One mode of response was verbal. Participants said yes or no as noted. Another one was just spatial. They were given a response sheet on which the letters Y and N were printed in an irregular pattern and were told to point either to a yes or no in each row to indicate their responses. And Brooks found that participants took 2.5 seconds longer, or 2.5 times longer rather, when they responded by pointing rather than verbally. And the suggestion is I have got one spatial task that's interfering with another with respect to this pointing task. If I'm pointing to Y's and N's, that's harder to do because I'm also spatially governing my way around the capital F. On the other hand, verbally is easier. So the yes-no decision, again, was whether it was at the extreme top, which would be a yes, or extreme bottom of the letter. Extreme tops or bottoms are yeses, whereas the middle ones answers are no. So if I'm at this corner, if you can see my cursor here, if I'm at this corner right here in the indentation, that would be a no. On the other hand, the bottom right would be a yes. So it's a fine distinction, but extreme top or bottom was a yes, middle was a no. And if they can answer verbally, they were good at it. If they could answer spatially by pointing to a yes or a no, that was harder because they were already doing something spatial, if that makes sense. So in an unrelated task, or a related task that's completely different, participants were asked to remember a sentence such as a bird in the hand is not in the bush, and for each word to indicate whether it was a concrete noun, so bird, hand, bush, or concrete, etc. The other words are not. As with the previous task, participants sometimes responded verbally and other times by pointing to a yes or a no. With this task, it was the reverse. People were faster to respond by pointing because they had no spatial task that was already preoccupying them. They only had a verbal task. And once they were liberated from that spatial task, they were able to perform a spatial task better by pointing at yeses and nos. So here's the explanation. The first task requires the formation of a visual capital F. The visual image probably has at least some picture-like qualities. And so a spatial or visually guided response like pointing would be interfered with. It'd be hard to do. And conversely, holding a sentence in memory is easier to do with a concurrent visual task because that verbal task is not tying up the visual task, etc. So Brooks's work on the bottom sentence there supports the idea that images and words use different kind of codes. And if I'm occupying one code, the other code is easier to use. It's a fascinating idea, and it's amazing how clever these experiments were dating back to the 60s.